Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for our first town hall of the year, 100 days or less than 100 days to cancel student loan debt. We have special guests, Senators Chuck Schumer and Senator Elizabeth Warren, Representative Ayanna Pressley, and many more student debt champions joining us today. I'm Natalia Abrams. I'm the president and co-founder here at Student Debt Crisis Center. And today we're honored to be joined by our partners at NextGen America, Public Citizen, and MoveOn.org, who have joined us to host this town hall and showcase strong support for broad-based debt cancellation. Just last week, we marked 100 days until May 1st, when student loan payments are set to resume for millions of Americans. We can't let that happen. We must cancel student debt before payments resume. That's why now it's time to get involved. Over 86 lawmakers in the Senate and House support student debt cancellation, and we've pressured the administration and won to extend pandemic relief. Now we are organizing lawmakers, activists, and all of you to fight for permanent debt cancellation for everyone. So today I am so honored to introduce joining us yet again, Senator Chuck Schumer. So he is the Senate Majority Leader and Senator from New York. Senator Schumer has been such a wonderful advocate for student loan borrowers and has been calling for $50,000 in student debt cancellation to boost our economy. Leader Schumer is calling on President Biden to take executive action now to cancel student debt. Leader Schumer, it's all yours.
Thank you, Natalia. And first, I think we ought to all, the close to 1,000 people on this Zoom, ought to just give Natalia a round of applause for the great work she has done leading this wonderful organization. And I also thank all of the folks who have been involved in this issue for so long. My colleague, Senator Warren, who was the first person to introduce me to this issue, Ayanna Pressley, who is leading the charge in the House, but most of all of you, the activists, because we all know that it's without you, we would never be able to accomplish our goal, which is to cancel student debt. This town hall, as you know, comes at a very important time. In 94 days, student loan payments will resume. And that burden, which has been on the shoulders of so many, but was lifted because of COVID, will be back on if we can't extend it. Everyone knows here the pause has been extended multiple times, and that's because of the good work of Natalia and the organizations that are part of this wonderful, wonderful effort. But pausing student loans isn't good enough. We need student debt erased, plain and simple. And that is what we want to accomplish here. And that's what we're trying to do. And let me just tell you, people still don't know this. This does not require legislation. We've all read about all the difficulties of getting bills done, particularly in the Senate with so many intransigent Republicans. That is not true of student debt. The president can do it with the flick of a pen. All he has to do is sign an executive order. He doesn't need a single senator. He doesn't need a single Congress member on his side. He just has to do it. And it will provide, if they do that, if the administration signs this, it will provide immediate relief to millions of Americans currently saddled with this awful debt. And I know how it is. Every month you dread the payment, and they are not so long ago that you were feeling this way. And it takes away your ability to do so many other things that you want to do, whether it's enjoying life, like going out to a restaurant or going on vacation, or the greater necessities of life, like buying an appliance or buying a car or moving or changing jobs or so many other things that are just so important to do. And as I see in the chat room, some people can't even retire because they have to pay back the debt. And one of the great tragedies is for many people, because interest rates are so high and the way this is structured, even though they're paying each month, their debt is not reduced. So we've been pushing, Senator Warren, Congressman Pressley, and so many others, we're calling on the president to do it, to cancel up to $50,000 in federal student loan debt. I'd like to cancel the whole thing, but we're starting off with the $50,000. and then we'll move on from there, but we won't give up even if we succeed there, and I believe and hope we will. Yesterday, along with Senator Warren and Representative Jayapal, Pressley, Omar, and Porter, we led a letter signed by 80 Senate and House colleagues to call on the administration, outlining the administration's legal authority. When Elizabeth and I started on this, they denied that they had the authority to do it. They don't deny that anymore. We've made the conclusive case. It's not a small problem, student debt. It's one of the biggest economic anchors on our entire economy. 43 million Americans, 43 million, hold 1.7 trillion in student loan debt. And the 43 million doesn't include the children or spouses or parents or others who depend on these people who are paying the debt as well. So it affects many more than 43 million, large enough as that is. And 1 in 5 of our borrowers is now in default. That damages their finances in years to come. A survey of from the student debt crisis tells us that 89% of full-time employed borrowers expect to be financially insecure if these payments resume. So we have a crucial window. We don't want them to do another pause. We want them to end it, to cancel it before the pause is over. And I say this all the time. College, higher education should be a ladder up. That's what it's always been. Not an anchor down, weighing Americans down. And we all know this is especially true of Black and brown borrowers who disproportionately shoulder this burden, this awful burden of debt. They're more likely to borrow money to go to college, borrow more money in college, and have a harder time because of all kinds of discriminatory practices in society in paying it off after graduating. And so canceling 50,000 listen to this, would decrease the wealth gap between Black and white borrowers by 20.5 points and by 27 points between white and Latino borrowers. So this is not only the right thing to do on a humanitarian basis for the 43 million who struggle with this debt, not only the right thing to do on an economic basis, so we can continue, instead of paying this debt at exorbitantly high interest rates, this money can be used to pump up the economy in much more productive ways. But it's also an issue of racial equity. So we need permanent relief. I want to thank you. Continue to fight, folks. We're going to win this fight. We are going to win this fight. My dad passed away 2 months ago, but he taught me that if you're on the right side and you keep at it, you will be rewarded. God will reward you. I believe that. So let's keep fighting. Let's keep fighting until we win, and we are going to win. With that, let me turn it over to someone who has just been essential to this issue. I'm honored to stand with her in this effort. She's the person who originally informed me of this effort and got me excited about it. You can see that I am excited about it all the time, and is just a great and has a great brain and heart and soul on this issue and so many other issues as she pushes forward. Elizabeth Warren.
Oh, thank you, Leader Schumer. And I just want to say to all of you that Chuck Schumer has been a fabulous partner in this fight. There are some people who partner up and they're like, yeah, you can use my name. But there are people who actually get into the fight and who muscle it, who work others on it. And that is very much Senate Majority Leader Schumer, who is a terrific partner, and I thank you for that, Chuck. It's good to fight alongside you. I also want to say what an honor it is to be here with my dear friend, Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley. She has also been a tremendous partner in the fight to cancel student debt. She fights from the heart. She makes it matter. I also want to give a very special thanks to NextGen, to Student Debt Crisis Center, and Public Citizen for your hard work to help build a future for millions of student borrowers. And a thank you to Christina Sinsun Ramirez for your leadership and your support in the push to cancel student debt. So look, we've all been working on this issue together, and this is the moment. Right now is the time to make real change, to take immediate action to cancel student debt. My story is straightforward on this. When I graduated from college, it was $50 a semester. I'm in this fight today because I want every person in America to have an opportunity like I had, a chance to get the education they need without getting crushed by student loan debt. This is about opportunity. This is about doing the right thing. Canceling $50,000 of student loan debt would give 36 million Americans permanent total relief. That would be the end of their debt burden. And it would aid millions more by significantly reducing the principal on their debt. Now, the president has the authority to do it. As Leader Schumer said, he can do it today with the stroke of a pen. The pause on federal student loan debt payments, on interest, on collections, has shown us the way. It has improved borrowers' economic security. It's allowed people to invest in their families, to save for emergencies, to pay down other debt. In other words, because they weren't making student loan payments, millions of people in this country were able to make ends meet and have some security in their lives. But we're all staring down another student loan time bomb, the date when the payments are going to resume. And that could throw millions of families over a financial cliff when it explodes. On May 1st, borrowers will have to begin making their payments on their student loans. Payments that have been on pause now for 2 years. Once the pause ends, more than a quarter of borrowers expect at least 1/3 of their income will have to go towards servicing their student loans. That would strip $85 billion out of the national economy over the next year. Restarting payments without canceling student debt will undermine these families' economic progress. People will struggle, they'll miss deadlines, they'll be delinquent, they'll owe penalties, and it'll hit the economy like a brick. Instead of spending money in our economy, the average borrower is going to have to start repaying nearly $400 a month to the government if we don't cancel that student debt. This makes student loan debt a financial anchor dragging down our economic recovery. And I point that out because so many people say, well, if I'm not a borrower, I shouldn't care. If you live in the American economy, then you should care about student loan debt because that debt holds back our economy. And it means more borrowers will put off starting businesses, put off buying homes, put off starting families. That affects all of us. For someone who's already struggling, thousands of dollars in student loan debt means not being able to come up with a down payment and qualify for a mortgage. This makes college debt a generational issue. The student debt crisis will hit borrowers of color especially hard. Black students have to borrow more money to go to college, borrow more money while they're in college, and have a harder time paying it off when they get out of college. I know you've heard the numbers, but there's one that I just have to push in front of you. So much about what's going on here. But think about this, 20 years after they have left college, the average white borrower who borrowed money while he was in school owes about 5% of the amount they originally borrowed. Still paying 20 years later, the average, the median, right in the middle, but the end is in sight. The average Black borrower owes 95% of the amount they originally borrowed. This is a matter of racial justice. And the answer is easy: cancel student debt. So, almost a year ago, in April 2021, the White House promised to release their own memo outlining the president's authority to cancel student loan debt. April 2021. It is time for the White House to publicly release this memo. Leader Schumer, Congresswoman Pressley, Congresswoman Jayapal, Congresswoman Porter, and I have called on them to do it. But the truth is, we already know that President Biden has the authority to act. How do we know? Because President Obama did it, because President Trump did it, and President Biden himself has already canceled $15 billion in student loan debt. They have, all of these presidents have the authority. We just need them to move. We have to keep up the pressure. We have to keep fighting for President Biden to act now, to cancel $50,000 in student loan debt, and to lock in brighter futures for millions of Americans. So I just want to say, this has been an amazing journey to this point. Some of us have been in this fight a long time. Some have joined us as we've gone along. It is an honor to fight alongside you. And I want to thank you again for all you're doing to make this happen. We are close. We've got to pull it across the finish line. So I'm going to turn this over to my dear colleague, Christina, who is a staunch civil rights leader who has been working hard to help millions of borrowers have a better future as NextGen America's president and executive director. So Christina, let me say it again. I am so grateful to you for your partnership in this fight to cancel debt. Take it away. Tell us what we need to do.
Well, thank you so much, Senator Warren, for being one of the core champions across the country that has brought this issue to the forefront, especially in Washington, when so many people didn't believe we could make change on this issue, and we're starting to show we can. So I'm the president of NextGen America. Last election, we helped mobilize 1 in 9 young voters to the polls, and millions of them said they were voting because they wanted to cancel student debt. And, for us, we see that canceling student debt is one of the most basic and simple things we can do right now to alleviate the economic pain and burden felt by an entire generation of Americans. Because I think we have to be really real about how bad the problem is. We are literally the first generation in American history to be worse off than our parents. More young people live today with their parents than at the end of the Great Depression. 45% of millennials in my generation are drowning in student debt. And we all know that this economic pain, this debt, is acutely felt by young people of color. But I think we also know that it's not by accident, it's by design. We see that as our country has become younger, Blacker, and browner, and the racial generation gap has grown, an older population that looks very different than its youngest has followed a pattern of divesting in our education, our economic well-being, and our futures. And as the price of college has gone through the roof and state governments have slashed funding to higher education, we all assumed more debt with the promise that our lives were going to be better. But we all know we've been sold a bill of goods. So before we talk about at NextGen why we believe we need to cancel student debt, I want to remind folks that college really should already be tuition free. Let's remember that when our countries decided to start offering free public education K through 12, a lot of people said that was crazy, that we couldn't afford it and people shouldn't have to pay their own way. But ultimately, as a country, we recognized that we needed an educated population and workforce, and that was good for our entire country and economy. Well, today, what a college degree is what a high school diploma was back then. And as a Latina, I am the first in my family who graduated from college. And I can tell you that in my community, there are millions of people that feel like they can't even dream of going to college because they have no idea how they're going to afford it. And they're afraid of ending up in debt and destitute. So let's remember that in other countries all over the world, they don't have the same student debt crisis we have in this country because college is already free. And that's why we have to cancel student debt now, because it's an economic drag on the lives of millions of Americans. As Senator Schumer said, 1 in 5 student debt borrowers are already in default. But if we canceled student debt, it would give millions of Americans help and help grow our economy. One study found that by canceling student debt, Black wealth in this country would increase by 40%. And let's not even mention folks across the country that could leave the confines of living in their parents' basements and buy a house, start a family, start a business, or just go on a vacation, for God's sake. All of these things are good for our economy. So no, it's not a radical idea to cancel student debt, grow our economy, and invest in our greatest asset, the American people. So we don't believe we are asking for too much. We are only asking for what we deserve and exactly what our country needs at this moment to help grow our economy and address the economic pain that an entire generation of Americans are living every single day. As the largest and most diverse generation in American history, we want to make clear that we aren't going to stop organizing, mobilizing, or voting until we win on this issue, because we refuse to accept the status quo. We refuse to accept a system that is more concerned with getting interest payments off of our hopes and dreams than actually allowing us to achieve and live them. So let's get organized. You can join us in this fight by going to nextgenamerica.org/act, where you can sign our petition and demand that the Biden administration act now, or get engaged and help mobilize others. We can win on this issue. And the way we're winning is by bringing the grassroots together with incredible legislators that are fighting for us in Washington. And I am so proud and honored to introduce one of those incredible leaders, Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley, who I am a total fangirl of and excited to just even get to introduce. As folks know, she is an absolute powerhouse in Washington, an advocate, policymaker, activist, and a survivor. She represents Massachusetts' 7th District in the House of Representatives. She is the first woman of color to be elected to Congress for the state of Massachusetts. And she has been leading and fighting, championing this issue for us, outlining a bold plan for President Biden to tackle the student debt crisis by using his authority under the Higher Education Act to cancel $50,000 in debt right now. So, Congresswoman, we are so excited to hear from you.
Thank you. Christina, thank you for those impassioned words and for that truth-telling. It is because of voices and leaders like your own that we honor the blueprint of the early chapters of the civil rights movement. This movement to cancel student debt is one rift with truth tellers. It is a disciplined and vigilant and a focused movement. And that is exactly why we have made the gains that we have so far. It is wonderful to sit at this virtual table with all of my siblings in the work of movement building and justice seeking. I want to thank our movement partners, Student Debt Crisis Center, NextGen America, Public Citizen, and MoveOn for helping to organize today's events and to bring us together. And thank you, of course, to my colleagues who have been indefatigable in their efforts. I'm grateful for their leadership and their partnership. Senate Majority Leader Schumer and my very own Senator Elizabeth Warren. Again, thank you both for your partnership in this effort. The movement to cancel student loan debt and combat this $1.7 trillion crisis has never been stronger. And make no mistake, that is a testament to, and that is only true, because of the intentional organizing, the intentional mobilizing, the intentional movement building from grassroots organizers like so many of you joining us today. We find ourselves at an unprecedented moment, experiencing unprecedented hardship, and you have met that moment with unprecedented organizing. And it is true, because of the millions of borrowers who have raised their voices and shed their stories to shed light on the real human impact of this unprecedented crisis. People like the 76-year-old grandmother, you heard me right, grandmother, 76 years old, still paying off student loans in my district, all while on Social Security and a fixed income. People like the young mom struggling to cover the skyrocketing costs of childcare, rent, and their student loan payments. The teacher who fears losing their license because they have gone into default and can't come up with that monthly minimum student loan payment to get back on track. And because of the voices of a generation of young people who have been forced to hold off on starting a business, purchasing a home, and even starting a family because of record levels of crushing student loan debt. And of course, Black and brown folks who, due to generations of precise and intentional, what I would characterize as policy violence, who have been forced to take on higher rates of student debt for just a chance at the same degree as our white peers. Make no mistake, student debt crisis is one that disproportionately impacts our Black and brown communities. But for too long, the narrative has excluded us and the unique ways in which this debt has been exacerbating racial and economic inequities and compounding our gender and racial wealth gap. And because of false narratives, many people see this as something, canceling student debt, as something that is regressive in impact. Untrue. And in fact, Black women in particular bear the heaviest burden as we are forced to take on higher student debt loads, all while navigating lingering workplace discrimination and a persistent wage gap that has allowed Black women to earn just 61 cents to every dollar earned by a white man. Now, this crisis is not naturally occurring. And over the pandemic, many of these inequities have only gotten worse. Let me be clear, this crisis is the result of policy choices. Discriminatory policies like redlining, which denied generations of Black and brown families the opportunity to build generational wealth. Policy choices like those made during the last financial crisis when policymakers bailed out Wall Street and abandoned Black and brown communities who lost everything. Policy choices that have resulted in the chronic underfunding of our historically Black colleges and universities, our community colleges, our state public universities, resulting in skyrocketing tuition and pushing a college degree out of reach for far too many. Now, again, over the last year, thanks to the relentless organizing and movement builders across the nation, the Biden administration chose to use the authority granted by Congress under the Higher Education Act to offer financial relief to millions of federal student loan borrowers by extending the pause on student loan payments, not once, but twice. It was a policy choice, one that recognized the crushing burden this debt was having on millions of workers and families in the midst of this ongoing pandemic. Now, in less than 100 days, the Biden administration has another opportunity to stand on the right side of history and to cancel $50,000 in student debt with the mere stroke of a pen. Doing so is one of the most effective ways to provide sweeping relief to millions of workers and families across this nation. Doing so would repair generations of hurt and harm imposed on Black and brown families and help reduce the racial wealth gap. Doing so would boost our economy and set the groundwork for a just, robust, and equitable recovery. And perhaps most importantly, canceling student debt would not require one single vote in Congress. In this moment, our communities deserve and demand this sort of bold and transformative action. This is the same diverse and multi-generational movement who turned out in record numbers to deliver Democrats the House, the Senate, and the White House. Student debt cancellation is core to these demands, and we must deliver. We're closer than ever to getting this done. We wouldn't be here today if it weren't for you. The state of our movement is strong, and I'm grateful and honored to be in this fight alongside you. And with that, I'm happy to kick it over to Remington Gregg from Public Citizen.
Thank you so much, Representative Pressley. You are a champion for consumers and borrowers and a fighter for racial justice. I'm Remington A. Gregg, Counsel for Civil Justice and Consumer Rights at Public Citizen. Corporations have their lobbyists. Everyday people need advocates too. And that's where we come in. Public Citizen is a nonprofit consumer advocacy organization that champions the public interest in the halls of power, in Congress, in courts, in conference rooms across the federal government. Public Citizen works to defend democracy, ensure that government works for the people, and resist corporate power's continuing attempts to take over more and more of our society. We take no corporate or government money, which allows us to call out bad actors, regardless of who they are. And that doesn't always make us popular, but that's not what drives us. What drives us is doing what's right. And that's why we're all in on the fight to cancel student debt. Canceling student debt would work to address long-standing issues of systemic inequality that have left Black and brown borrowers with more debt and less wealth than their peers, and white peers, as well as stimulate the economy in ways that would benefit the entire country. And it would put people like you first, not the big corporate student loan servicers that are making money off of you through their outrageous interest rates that have pushed so many people that I know that you know, into owing more today than they did when they graduated. That's just not right. We haven't joined this fight with all of you because it is easy. Indeed, it is an uphill climb. But as Representative Pressley said, as Senator Warren said, as Leader Schumer said, with all of you, the activists and everyday people leading this fight, who are just looking for a fair shake in life, we can get the president to do what is right and use his authority to cancel student debt. We're in this fight together, and I know that we'll get it done. Now, I am really pleased to introduce to you some of the leaders in Congress who are champions for student debt cancellation.
Hi, this is United States Senator Bob Menendez from New Jersey, and I am a proud supporter of your movement. I know, as so many of you do, that canceling student debt would fuel our economy and close the racial and gender wealth gaps for millions of people in New Jersey and across America. Simply put, this is an economic justice issue. It's about making it easier for you to pursue your dreams, buy a house, open a small business, or even start a family. That's why I fought hard last year to include relief for student loan borrowers in the American Rescue Plan, ensuring anyone whose student loan debt is forgiven is no longer on the hook for surprise tax payments through 2026. This set the stage for President Biden to cancel up to $50,000 in student debt, and I urge him to wait no longer. Now is the time for him to use his authority to cancel student debt. Now is the time to unleash the full potential of over 43.2 million student borrowers across the nation. President Biden, let's get this done.
Hi, I'm Senator Tina Smith. Our student debt crisis is out of control. And that's why I'm calling on President Biden to cancel up to $50,000 in federal student loan debt. Student debt is a huge burden that buries people in financial worry and limits their choices. It stops them from building the life that they want, like buying a house or getting married, starting a business, or saving up for retirement. Broad debt relief will give people greater freedom and opportunity. So I'm glad that President Biden has extended the pause on student loan repayments. And it's good that he is making public service loan forgiveness programs work better. This is good, but it's not enough. Let's cancel up to $50,000 of student loan debt. This is why I'm in this fight with you. So thank you and keep up the great work.
When we talk about the student debt crisis, we need to address all the ways this crisis is actively harming our communities. Not only are borrowers struggling to bear the weight of student debt, countless Black and Brown students are having their dreams of applying to college shattered due to the extremely high debt burden they will undoubtedly face. On average, Black women graduate with $6,000 more in student debt than white women, widening the racial and gender wealth gap even further. It's time for President Biden to use his executive authority to cancel student debt once and for all.
There you go. Thank you so much, Remington, and all the speakers so far. And we have many more speakers, and as Remington said, champions that are helping us fight to cancel student loan debt. So let's continue watching all these wonderful statements that were made for you today for this event.
I represent Silicon Valley in the United States Congress. Canceling student debt for working class families, for middle class families is personal to me. I had to take out over $100,000 in student loans to finish my education. And when I started out in my first job, I had a challenge paying the $1,000 a month. In fact, one of the years, because I took time off to work for John Kerry, I was so concerned about the Iraq War, and I took time off. I had to get a forbearance on my student loans, and then I realized that the interest kept building up. Now, I have been fortunate in life, and I am capable of now paying them back and have done well. But many other folks are still saddled with this debt in their 40s and their 50s and their 60s. It cripples people from buying a house. It cripples them from starting a family. It has a disproportionate impact on women, on people of color, particularly in the African American community. We've got to give people a fair shot to start life, to build wealth, to start a family. Cancel student debt up to $50,000 at least, as Senator Warren and Senator Schumer have said. The president can do this with a stroke of his pen. He should.
Hi, I'm Alex Padilla, U.S. Senator for California. The student debt crisis has reached a breaking point in America. More than 43 million Americans owe more than $1.5 trillion. In California alone, that's more than 4 million people who owe more than $150 billion in federal student debt. And this is holding people back from buying homes, from saving for retirement, or oftentimes just making ends meet at the end of the month. Student debt cancellation is one of the most significant, impactful actions that President Biden can take right now, and in doing so, help move us towards a more diverse and inclusive economy. It's time to cancel student debt so that everyone can reach their American dream.
I'm Congresswoman Nikema Williams, and I proudly represent Georgia's 5th Congressional District. The American people were told that college was the path to the American dream. But far too many of us have cast those dreams aside because the burden of crushing student loan debt is at the forefront of our minds. Student loan debt can prevent you from getting a job, buying a car, or even purchasing a home. Canceling student debt will help us close the racial wealth gap, an issue that I care deeply about. I'm fighting every day to make student debt cancellation a reality. And until we get there, y'all, I just introduced the Student Loan Rehabilitation and Credit Score Improvement Act. There are steps that we can take right now to relieve debt-burdened borrowers, and I'm determined to find them. Y'all, I'm one of the 44.7 million Americans who are still paying off their student loans long after college. Student debt has created a uniquely American nightmare for far too many of us who decided to take this path. I commend every single person fighting for student debt cancellation to ensure that everyone gets a fighting chance at the American dream.
I want to applaud the Student Debt Crisis Center for putting this together. It pains me as a former school teacher to see so many people burdened with unbearable debt because they've had the temerity to go out and get an education that they need to get a job and succeed in this great society of ours. That's why I'm proud to sponsor, along with so many other Democrats, the president issuing a $50,000 forgiveness. We have got to eliminate the burden that people have had upon them. I'm co-sponsor of legislation that also says that, if you work in public service, whether at the local, state, or federal level, that for every year of service you work and provide, we'll give you 2 years of in-state college tuition loan forgiveness. Whatever it takes, legislation that Joe Courtney and I are working on, as well as all of Congress, we've got to solve this crisis. We cannot burden a whole generation and prevent them from enjoying raising children, having a home of their own, building assets, instead of being burdened by debt that they can't get out from under. That's what an education was not about, putting you in debt. It was about getting you further ahead. Thank you again to the Student Debt Crisis Center, and also for NextGen America and Public Citizen for all your work. We have to do this.
Hi, everybody. I'm Congresswoman Frederica S. Wilson from Florida, and I lead the subcommittee that oversees higher education in the House of Representatives. Student loan debt has placed a crushing psychological and financial burden on millions of borrowers, citizens who wish to further their education and to contribute to society. And because of the overwhelming burden of student loan debt, families across America have delayed or foregone decisions for their future, like getting married, having children, buying a home, or contributing to their retirement savings. We know that student loan debt disproportionately affects low-income borrowers and borrowers of color, specifically Black, who on average owe thousands more on their loans after graduation than white students. We must invest in American families and their futures by delivering broad-based loan forgiveness. As a veteran educator and as a member of Congress, I will continue fighting for student loan forgiveness so that this generation is the last to experience America's student loan debt crisis. May God bless all of you, and may God bless America.
Hey, everybody. Do you know that today the student debt crisis has reached more than $1.7 trillion? This crisis directly impacts more than 45 million Americans who are being crushed by this financial burden. Student loan payments are set to resume in less than 100 days. But let's stop talking about just delaying payments. President Biden has the authority to cancel student debt with the stroke of a pen. It's essential that we continue to provide economic relief from this pandemic to those who need it most. And canceling student debt is a necessary step to reviving our economy. The student debt crisis is also a racial, gender, and economic justice issue that disproportionately impacts people of color and women. Black borrowers, for example, on average owe $25,000 more than white borrowers, and 2/3 of all student loan debt is held by women. Just imagine if Americans were not burdened by this mountain of student debt. They'd be able to buy houses, begin families, and invest in their communities by starting businesses without worrying about how they're going to make ends meet. President Biden must make good on his promise and take executive action to cancel $50,000 in student debt for every single affected American. And the president doesn't need Joe Manchin or Kristen Sinema's permission to do it. Let's go. The time is now.
That's right. Congress gave the president this authority to cancel student debt under the Higher Education Act of 1965. And that law, been in existence for more than 50 years, as some have already stated, gives the Secretary of Education the authority. And we're just not making this up. Like, I will quote you. It gives the Secretary of Education, at the direction of the president, the authority to, quote, enforce, pay, compromise, waive, or release any right, title, claim, lien, or demand that the department has. So the authority is clear. And we have seen that authority used before, as Senator Warren and Leader Schumer and Rep. Pressley have said. You know, for example, the monthly payments that are still counting toward other Department of Education cancellation programs, such as the Public Loan Service Forgiveness, that's a form of student debt cancellation. So it's already happening, and we need to push to do more. Okay, so we've gotten some of the legalese out of the way. We are going to soon start answering some of your questions. There are some amazing questions, some amazing stories, some really infuriating stories that are in the chat, and we're going to get to some of that in a second. But right now, I want to introduce you to another set of congressional champions because they are still all in on the student debt cancellation. It's important to hear from them, and then we'll come back and we'll take some questions.
Hi, it's Congresswoman Jan Schakowsky. I am so happy to join your virtual town hall meeting where you're talking about how are we going to stop the terrible burden on so many Americans. Now, you know, the United States is really an outlier when it comes to this. Now, if you look around the world, what you find is most other countries, developed countries, do not do that. College is free for them. Now, think about it. Besides the individual, we know that this makes us less competitive in the world. It really lowers our future opportunities, again, for individuals, but also for our country, if people are discouraged from going on with their education, seeking advanced degrees, becoming scientists and teachers, et cetera, that make our country more productive and more competitive. So I am happily joining with some of my colleagues in the House and Senate, Ayanna Pressley, a dear friend of mine in the House of Representatives, and also Chuck Schumer and Elizabeth Warren in the Senate, to call on the President of the United States to use whatever executive powers he may have to reduce student debt by $50,000.
Greetings. I'm Congresswoman Alma Adams, proudly representing 900,000 residents from Charlotte, Mecklenburg County. Before I was a member of Congress, I was a professor for 40 years. I saw firsthand the negative impact that crushing student debt could have on bright, young, and hopeful minds. That's why I've consistently called on the administration to use its authority to cancel up to $50,000 in debt for every American. And I'm proud to be one of the congressional leaders of the movement to cancel significant amounts of student loan debt. This is about economic relief and equity. Student debt prevents Americans across the country from building and creating wealth that they can pass down to their children and grandchildren, contributing to the wealth gap and hindering upward mobility. I am pleased that the administration has extended the student loan payment pause until later this year. But more can be done for our students. More must be done for our students. Let us continue to show our children and grandchildren how important and valuable education is without the crushing price tag. Thank you.
I'm Congressman Jesus Chuy Garcia, and I support canceling student debt because my constituents deserve the opportunity to pursue higher education without a lifetime of debt. Student debt contributes to the wealth gap and hinders upward mobility, particularly among Latino and Black Americans like the ones I represent, who were historically excluded from education and are now buried in debt. With the stroke of a pen, President Biden can help make education a pathway to mobility, not a burden. Let's cancel student debt and give hope and opportunity to millions of Americans.
Hello, everyone. I'm Senator Ed Markey, and I'm honored to join you today and fight to cancel student debt. Our young people are leading on the most important issues of our time, from bold climate action to combating inequity in our country. But if we want young people to shape the future, we also must protect theirs. And that means that we cannot saddle them with a student debt crisis. I worked hard to get through college and law school. And it wasn't until 10 years after I graduated from law school, and I was already in my third term in Congress, that I finally paid off my student loans. But today, the cost of college is more than 30 times what it was then. We need to make public colleges tuition free, and we need to cancel thousands of dollars of student debt for the millions of Americans burdened by outrageous loans. President Biden has the authority to issue an executive order that will cancel $50,000 of student loan debt for every borrower. It will be an act of justice, economic stimulus, and urgently needed relief all at once. Let's cancel student debt today and set our young people on a path to a more financially secure, just future. Let us do it now.
Wow. Let us do it now, as Senator Markey said. I'm so inspired and jazzed. I hope you all are too. We see you in the chat. We know your frustration. I just want to say I've been doing this a decade. And, when we first got started, there was very few people talking about this in Congress. And now we have, over 87 champions and the dozen or so lawmakers that came to you today, not to mention the wonderful orgs that have joined us. Remington Gregg with Public Citizen, Christina with NextGen America, our partners at MoveOn. We're very grateful to all of you. And with the few moments we have left, we'd love to, take a moment to answer some of these questions that we're seeing in the chat. And we'll stay on a little bit after, since we've had over 1,000 of you join today to listen to us in your evening hours. So thank you again. And with that, I'd love to just get to some questions real quick. So Remington, you discussed the legal authority. We're hearing from so many parents in the chat, and I saw that Cheryl asked, will Parent Plus loans or parent loans be included in the fight to cancel student loan debt?
Well, it's absolutely part of the fight to cancel student debt. The federal government owns about 92% of all student debt. So the federal government, the president, can cancel 0 to 92%. It is a question of will. Whether we shouldn't be talking about whether or not he has the authority. He has the authority. What we should be talking about is how much he's canceling and for who. And so we want to ensure that everyone is part of this fight, that you are also part of the fight. Just don't think that this is something for 20s or 30-year-olds. This is impacting a lot of people, and we are in this fight together.
Thanks, Remington. We're also seeing a lot of folks ask, does it matter? Is it worth it to sign petitions, to send letters? Christina, I know you at NextGen have been in this fight for a long time and doing that work. Can you speak a little to, the importance of taking action and how to do so?
Well, let's just look at all of the congressional representatives and the senators that just sent in videos to say, we are for canceling student debt. If we can remember just to the 2016 election, when people said, let's cancel student debt, let's start talking about investing and making college tuition free at public universities, people said that even entertaining the idea that we were going to cancel student debt, that was too crazy and far out idea. And now we've brought it to the center of the Democratic Party. And that didn't happen on its own. That happened because of organizing, mobilizing, and electing people that were going to fight on this issue and be champions. And it's great that we have Senator Warren, we have Senator Schumer, we have Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley, but now they are a part of a movement. And that movement was created by us, the American people, created by voters and student debt borrowers. And the majority of the population is with us. The majority of the American public supports canceling student debt. So now the pressure is on the Biden administration. We know they have the legal authority. Let's keep organizing to get it done. When you're pushing and making change, sometimes you don't realize when you're in the moment how far you've come. So let's remember where we were a few years ago. We now are really, really brought this to the center stage of the Democratic Party, and we're going to bring it to the center stage of the Biden administration, make sure they get it done.
Hallelujah. Yes, absolutely. And I just want to say we're winning. This is working. We've built the movement. Because so many of you shared stories and spoke up, we were able to get another extension for student loans. Look, a pause is not policy. This is not good enough at all. We have to cancel the debt. But weeks before the pause, we thought the White House was immovable. And because so many people spoke up, and so many of the great orgs on this call have done such great, I keep saying great, have done such amazing work. We were able to make that extension. So now we have less than 100 days to cancel student debt. And one of the things that was brought up by a few of the members was this memo. And Remington, can you speak a little to what this memo is and why it's so important?
Yeah. So there is a memo circulating. This started back when the president asked the Department of Education to tell him whether he had the legal authority to cancel student debt. The Department of Education did that. They did as they were instructed, and they drafted the memo stating what they believed the president could do under the law. But then they refused to make that memo public. And the White House has refused to make that memo public. Now, we do know that it exists because an organization through the Freedom of Information Act requested it. And then they received that memo. And you know what? It was completely redacted, except it was like it was ridiculous. You couldn't see anything. But we do know that the memo exists. And I personally believe that that memo states that the president has the legal authority to cancel student debt. Because guess what? If the lawyers in the Department of Education thought, you know what, after careful study and deliberation, we just don't see it. We don't think that he has the authority to cancel student debt. They would have released that in a shot because that would have been their political cover. They would have said, I'm sorry, we can't do it. The law doesn't let us. The fact that they refuse to release it in full, to let us read it, to let us see what it says, suggests to me that the lawyers believe that they can do it. So therefore, this isn't a legal question. It's not a policy question now. It's a political one. Will the president of the United States stand on his word and cancel student debt like he said he would do in the campaign? Millions of people are asking for that. Millions of people went out and voted for him for that reason. And so now it's our turn to make sure that he does his part and that they live up to their promises.
You're absolutely right. He promised to, candidate Biden promised to cancel $10,000 immediately for COVID relief of student loan debt, and then to cancel student debt for all Americans that made under $125,000. We don't necessarily like the means testing on that, but the importance of that is that it was beyond 10,000. It was to cancel as much debt as possible, and we have to hold him to that promise. Right now they have claimed, rightfully so, that most federal loan borrowers have not made a single payment under his administration. We need to continue that so no payments are made again on the America's student debt. I want to give you, Christina and Remington, a quick moment to shout out the work that you're doing, and we will wrap this up since we're over time. We just had so many lawmakers that we couldn't fit it into an hour. But Christina?
Well, NextGen, we're the largest youth voter mobilization group in the country. And we know from our work all across the country, organizing and mobilizing millions of young people, that this is one of the top issues that people face across this country, and that people are voting on this issue and they're demanding real action. And that we understand that voting is just one of the most basic ways we must make change this upcoming election. But it's also about organizing with our partners here and building power and momentum on this issue. We are 1,000 people on this call, 1,000 people strong that can then go organize others in our community and uplift our own story. So go share the work of the Student Debt Coalition, go share the work of Public Citizen, go share the work of NextGen America on your own social media, and tell your own story of how the student debt crisis is impacting you and your family. That storytelling is incredibly powerful, along with all the action we're taking together. And again, just remember how far we've come, and we're not finished yet. We're going to cancel the student debt, and then we're going to work to make college tuition free, because it really should be. We should join the rest of the industrialized world, in my opinion.
Absolutely. Remington?
Well, Christina, you're speaking truth, and I will just be quick. But I will ask everyone a question. How much was this in the news 2 years ago? How often were reporters talking to the White House press secretary and others about canceling student debt 2 years ago? How often was this part of the conversation at the dining room table? It wasn't. So when people say we haven't done it yet, just think of where we have come from in just a short time. We still have a way to go, but we are getting there, and we're getting there because of organizations on this call, people on this call, and others who couldn't be part of this. So we have to continue to amp up the pressure. We have to continue to hold our elected representatives accountable. Grassroots organizing works, activism works, pushing people in power works. And if we continue to do that, we can get to where we are, so that people aren't being, so that their Social Security isn't being garnished, so that their wages aren't being garnished, so that they can actually afford to pay for a house or just afford basic necessities. We can get this done if we do it together, and I think we will. Thanks.
Thank you, Remington. Thank you, Christina. You know, we got started at Student Debt Crisis Center with a petition to forgive student loan debt. That's what we called it back then, about a decade ago, actually a decade ago. 1 million of you signed it. Now we're 2 million strong at Student Debt Crisis Center. And it's because of your tireless support, advocacy, sharing your stories that allows us to do our work of partnering with great organizations and lawmakers to once and for all end the student debt crisis. So we are just so grateful that more than 1,000 of you joined today. And, you know, next time we'll be 10,000 strong. We will cancel student debt. And we're going to do it this year. So thank you so much and have a wonderful day or evening. Bye-bye.